Welcome to the ninth module in the .NET Learn Wednesday series, where we talk about C# basics. And in this module, we'll be doing something pretty simple. And it's one of the things you'll actually get to work with frequently in C# as you progress in your journey. It's the concept of collection. So you could have a collection of objects. Remember in the last lesson when we were looping through and we have the for each loop, we are iterated over an array. That is what we'll be looking at in this module. So let's get right to it. So over here, I'll go ahead and create a new console application. That's .NET new console. I'll output that into 09 collections. I'll close this up and I'll open this. I'll delete the boilerplate code as usual. Now, what kind of collections can we have? I'll first talk about array. What is an array? An array is simply a collection of objects, or a collection generally is a group of items that basically have the same data type. So for example, you could have a group of integers, a group of strings, a group of characters, a group of decimals, a group of floats, even a group of custom classes that you create by yourself. Alright, so what I'll go ahead and do now is actually show you how that works. So what I'll do is I'll first start with an array, and this is how it works. If I need to declare an array, let's say I want to have an array of strings or maybe an array of numbers. Let me actually do it for numbers. So I could have an array of numbers. I'll denote that with this bracket here. So brackets. So my array, or let me call it my int array, equals. Now there are many ways you could actually do this. You could declare the array and initialize the elements to the value. So basically a collection has elements and the elements have indexes. The index is the location of the elements in the collection, and the element is actually just the unit, the singular unit of the collection. So you could do this. This is one way to declare it. And what this does is it declares this collection as an array that contains 5 elements. And note, in C#, when you declare a collection of objects, the index, that is the location of the elements, actually start from 0, not 1. So if you have 5 elements, the elements in the 5 index, in the first index, will be at location 0. The index will be 0. And the 5th element will have index of 4. So basically the index of an element is n minus 1. So the total number of the max number of index can have is n minus 1. So normally the first element now will have an index of 0. And how do I know that? Or how do I call it? If I want to call it now, I could say console.writeLine. I'll say my int array, and then print out the element. If I want to print out the last element, it will be 4. Right, so I'll put the index 4 here. So I could actually just go ahead and say my int array, and the element at 4 is this. Right, so this is one way to declare an array. Or I could declare the array and initialize it with values from the onset. So I could also have it this way. I could have my int array to be this way. It means this array contains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 elements. And if I try to print this, if I try to run this application now, it will print out 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the result it will print out for me would be 8. Let's actually try that and see what it outputs for us. So I'll do a .NET run over here. The program I'll be running is 09 collections. We'll just wait for it, and then we'll see the value we get out of here is 8, just as we said over here. So we could actually go ahead and just play around this as normally as we would on a normal day. And we could iterate over it using the for each loop as we did in the previous class. We could use the for loop also in any way. So let me actually use a for loop to actually iterate over this. So what I'll do is I'll have my for loop starting at 0, that is the starting index, and then going up until my int array dot length. That is the maximum value it contains. And then what I'll just do is I'll go ahead and print console the right line my int array at index I. So what normally happens is at every iteration of this loop, the value to print out will be the index that this I bears. So when I is at 0, it print out 1. When it's at 1, it will print out 5. When it's at 2, it will print out 8. On and on until it gets to the last element. Let's actually go ahead, save this and run it and see what that looks like. You can see it printed 158 just like that in order. We could also use a for each loop over it, as the case might be. Now, let us talk a little bit about lists and the difference between an array and a list and what it would be. So what I'll do is I'll create a list over here, list of ints, just like I created for this one, and I'll say my int list is. Now the way we declare this will be very much different. So it's very much different. Sorry about that. So I could have just the elements as I normally do. See over here. So to use a list in C#, I need to import the namespace using system.collections.generic. Not code dump, collections.generic. That's how I'll be able to use list in my code. Alright. Then I could do a for each over it. Now, what exactly did I do here? I did a for each loop over this, and note that this is a little bit different from the way I'm working with the array. If I'm using a for each loop, I just print out the element, just like that, because it already knows the index and it knows the element it contains at that instance. It should just work the same way. If I go ahead to run this now, it will print out for me from the beginning to the end, 1 up until 7. Now, you might want to ask, why should I use a list instead of an array? Why should I use an array instead of a list? The difference between them is simple. An array has a constant value set. It has constant number of elements it contains. Whereas a list, as you can add values to it, you can remove values for it after initializing. But an array, you cannot do that. With an array, once you declare the number of elements it contains, you cannot add to it. So if this element contains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 elements, you can actually add more elements to it. But an array, you cannot do that. If you need to do that, you need to create another array with an expanded length, and then copy the existing array into it and then start using the new array. But a list, on the other hand, you can keep on adding to it. There's also observable collections. We'll deal with that a little bit more when we get into asynchronous processes and all that, working with user interfaces and all sorts. But I just wanted to show us how we could work with collections basically in C#. I hope you're able to learn something in this module, and I will see you up in the next module. Bye bye.